Welcome to Brand Builders TV. Deep dive topics, tools and resources brought to you by global thought leaders from within the Brand Builders Club. This show gives you access to the strategies that you can use to move forward with ease and flow in every area of your life and business. In today's show, Carol is going to take you behind how she carried her ADD secret for years before she had the courage to admit it to herself and the people in her life. In reality, ADD was responsible for her success in every element of her corporate career. In fact, the characteristics of hyperfocus, creativity, high energy and leadership all contributed to the roles that she has played in all major projects. So tune in now, as Carol will also be sharing with you a list of the positive and negative characteristics that many people with ADD or ADHD exhibit, and how you can use this to your advantage when building your team or outsourcing. Learn it, model it, and get shit done. Let's go.
Welcome to Brand Builders TV. I am Carol Vincie. I spent 25 years in the corporate world. I am the founder of Productivity Tools and Insights. I am a solopreneur, a speaker, and an author. I am going to take you through the process that I used to uncover my ADD advantages. A little bit about the history of the book and the research that I did that I wanted to share with you, because so many people are not aware of the characteristics of ADD, ADHD, and the fact that it is talked about as a deficit disorder is frustrating to the entire medical and counseling community. Just as an aside, if anybody has a better suggestion, I know the field is open to that. This is my first Facebook Live event. People have been hounding me to join the social media effort of the 21st century, and I am giving up my resistance and launching for the first time. I was reminded of the behavior that I challenged in some of my information technology clients when I would use this expression, kicking and screaming into the 19th century as technology leapfrog some of the administrative processes. Well, now it is my turn. Since I do not have a Facebook presence, I thought I would take a moment to share a little bit about my background so you can catch up. I had been a part-time solopreneur from the time I was a junior in high school. I was teaching piano lessons to young students so that I could pay for my college tuition. During my corporate life, where my work week was typically 60 hours a week, I also managed rental real estate properties that I had accumulated, both as the I've been moved antic of IBM generated some residences that I was no longer living in, but maintained for the rental income. After I started working and I could afford it, I played tennis, both during the winter and in the summer. I'm an avid downhill skier, loving the powder of Alta, Utah. And when my job took me on airplanes on a regular basis, I spent 25 to 30 days a year skiing west of the Mississippi. When I became a full-time entrepreneur, I ended up planting 200 ornamental grasses on the property I lived in at the time. Now you may say, how does this information relate to the time slot of achieving balance? That will be revealed as we progress through this presentation. My topic of discovering your ADDvantage is focused on a couple of the myths that are in the field of attention deficit disorder and attention hyperactivity disorder. The first one is that it is a male-oriented challenge. The second one is you grow out of it, and it's not an issue as an adult. And the third one is good parenting will reduce the symptoms. Now, before some of you jump out of your chairs, let me take a moment to discuss some of the issues in those three subjects. Attention deficit hyperactivity. The hyper is more prevalent in males. Therefore, the male student who's standing there, my turn, or pounding on the desk is more disruptive in the classroom environment, so the boys get all the attention. Females tend not to exhibit the hyperactivity. We tend to be shy and daydreamers, so we're great students. I remember in grammar school sitting next to a boy who would draw during all the classes, and he had exquisite renderings of various automobiles at the time. I'm sure some of his designs have made it into the automobile industry. I, on the other hand, would sit there daydreaming, looking out the window. Ideal student, quiet, reserved, not a challenge, went unnoticed. And when I grew up, there was little known about ADD and ADHD, so it was not a surprise that it wasn't a point of contention or interest by most of the teachers. A percentage of children do show less symptoms as they age through the teenage years. Risk-taking behavior, though, is prevalent in both the males and females, but primarily the studies, as in most medical studies, are 90+% males. And a recent study has revealed that males, I won't say people, but males with ADD and ADHD have a 13-year shorter lifespan. I think there was one woman in the study that I reviewed. When I was a volunteer EMT and taught CPR, I would share with the participants that heart disease studies are 91% male. And I made the offhanded comment that always got a chuckle, was since women outlive men, I think we're better off without their help. The parent side of ADD and ADHD, it is hereditary. So it is very likely that one or both of your parents or a close relative like a grandparent, aunt, or uncle exhibits the characteristics of ADD and ADHD. The role that parents can play that is really significant is to reduce the sugar intake that's part of the diet. And I know that's hard, but the symptoms are significantly mitigated as you reduce your sugar intake. And exercise, you need to make it mandatory. And I know that's hard. We're all in shutdown around the world, and the kids spend a phenomenal amount of time on their cell phones, their tablets, but exercise secretes additional dopamine. And brain scans, with the help of current science, have confirmed that our brains are in fact different. It's not a weakness. The brain structure is different. And we secrete less dopamine than the average person. So exercise secretes additional dopamine. It's why, without being aware of the fact that I had ADD or any of the science behind it, when I had the opportunity and the resources, I was compulsive about the exercise that I included in my schedule. And that helped with a lot of relief of the symptoms. I chose not to take medication. I don't take medication for anything. And I chose to use diet and exercise as an alternative. And it worked effectively. I had a young man working for me who did some care of an autistic child on weekends to give the parents some relief. And he mentioned that he had bought a large bottle of soda, and I suggested that maybe he use something else as the drink of choice. And the next weekend he came back after spending the weekend with the child and indicated that the behavior was much less erratic, which was verification on a single sample, but certainly verification that it's appropriate. I want to take you through a couple of names that are well known in various industries to help you appreciate the fact that the benefits, if we focus on the part that our strengths, are significant in achieving outstanding behavior in a cross-section of fields. Let me first start with Olympians. Simone Biles, the gymnast. Michael Phelps, the swimmer. Both have acknowledged their ADD. I'm not outing anybody here. These are people who have discussed it. Michael Phelps got into some inappropriate behavior when he did not have the opportunity to have the structure of a rigorous exercise routine. Everybody knows that. It cost him a significant amount of money in terms of endorsements. Let me talk about athletes. Pete Rose of baseball fame. He was a great player, but his need for risk got him suspended from baseball for his gambling. He needed that thrill. So we have to provide ourselves with some way of generating that extra dopamine that we need, and hopefully we can find something that's more appropriate. Bubba Watson. If you've ever watched golf on TV, whenever the commentators have to make comments about how Bubba's going to attack the shot that he's about to hit, they are baffled. They have no clue of what he's about to do with the next ball. He is probably the most creative golfer in both the men's and women's professional tour. And he talks openly about how difficult it is for him to control the chaos that's going on in his brain at any given time. Let's talk about performers. Justin Timberlake and Channing Tatum have both spoken openly about their ADD. And we have an astronaut, Scott Kelly, his ADD, and actually had very poor school skills until he read a book about one of the other astronauts, which motivated him to take school seriously and achieved probably what the highest level of flight is, being part of one of the trips to outer space. And business owners. Here we have a couple of recommendations. Paul Arfalas, the founder of Kinko's. He offered school supplies to his college roommates, and that was what launched his venture with Kinko's, which are now probably international supply stores around the world. David Nettleman, he's the founder of JetBlue Airlines. He took the airline industry into a totally different direction long before charter flights or more economical flight was part of the industry. He had the vision, and he's been quoted to say he would not give up his ADHD because of the visionary insights that it gives him, and he will put up with some of the other chaotic behaviors in exchange for that. If he has been quoted to say, if there was a magic wand and I could eliminate that part of my life, I would choose to stay the same way I am right now. We look at things differently, and that is what distinguishes us and allows us to take on new ventures. Here are some of the positive behaviors that are part of the ADHD package. Hyperfocus. I wrote the first draft of my first book in 3 weeks. Now the downside is the mail didn't get open for 3 weeks, which probably caused some challenges in terms of getting bills paid. Visionary. The guy who started 800 Junk comes up with hundreds of ideas in a week. Now that everybody is confined to home, with all of the efforts to entertain ourselves, we're cleaning the attic and the basement and the garage, And at least in the US, the commercials that he has are very entertaining, where you point at something and say, make it disappear, and his people come and pick it up. And the reason that that's a benefit, at least here in the US, is that the local trash services have declined taking that much trash because they're just overwhelmed with everybody on their honey-do lists going through all the accumulation in the household. High energy. I've been often referred to as the Energizer Bunny by some of my colleagues. Tenacity. Now I'm going to go back in history a little bit. This is probably before people understood or even had any awareness of ADD and ADHD, and that's Thomas Edison. He was quoted as saying, "I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just found 10,000 solutions that didn't work." And he had the tenacity to keep at it until he was able to invent an electric light bulb that would work. And we're all the beneficiary of that in current society. Risk taker. I've already spoken about Pete Rose and his gambling problems, and the fact that the life expectancy of males is shorter when you're diagnosed with ADHD by 13 years compared to typical population with the same demographics. That is frightening and very scary. Enthusiasm. I'm going to refer to Steve Jobs here. How many people have waited in line for days in rain, in cold weather, so that you can be the first one on your block with the latest something or other? And strong leadership. Henry Ford is the example I'm going to use here. He repeatedly sent his design team back to the drawing boards when they said the engine that he envisioned was not possible. And now we're all the beneficiary of those vehicles that sit outside our doorway and that we use to motor around the area. During my corporate life, I undertook as many Mission Impossible projects as I could without understanding my driving force. I was sitting in a briefing at one of the international financial management companies where all of the top executives were told that they needed to understand the characteristics of ADD and ADHD so that they could manage the people on their staffs who might have those characteristics. The comment that the host of the meeting said, "If you don't understand how to manage these people and keep them content, despite their failure to conform to the normal 9-to-5 schedule, they will go work for someone else, one of our competitors, and we will never catch up." His comment was that each of us, each one of those people, will come up with more great ideas than their entire remaining staff in a lifetime. And that was the moment that I sat in the room and said, oh my God, that's my challenge. That's what's been driving me. Partially to prove I wasn't stupid, but partially to just use that energy that I had and the creativity that my deficit provided me. And as I look back over the time that I had held this secret and this pressure, I was amazed. I didn't understand the negative impact of keeping this secret. It hasn't, at least for outward signs, except for my adrenal glands, which are completely shot, that the stress and the impact had. And once I admitted to the world, and I'll tell you just exactly how in a moment, it was like taking a 20-pound bag of briquettes off my shoulders. I was coaxed into writing an article for one of these anthology books about my ADD. And the moment that I had to push the button to say publish, I almost deleted the article. My concern was once I let the genie out of the bottle, I would never be able to put it back. And I wasn't sure how I would deal with that stress, that exposure, that vulnerability. It turned out I got very positive response. So I encourage you to think about that for yourself if you're in a similar situation. And once I got that positive feedback, that article was released to publication in November. The next month, between the Christmas and New Year holiday, I turned that article into the backbone of the book that is referred to here of Discover Your ADDvantage. Again, hyper-focus. I was determined. I was going to get it done, and I did. It still needs some modifications, but it's in process and will be released shortly. As I was creating the book, and I look back over my life, two things popped up. One was diet, and the other was exercise. My nickname as a child was Bunny. Even as a 3 or 4-year-old, given the choice between a piece of candy and a raw cucumber, I chose the cucumber. Somehow or other, I knew that my body reacted better with the cucumber. My college roommates would joke with me that they could order dinner for me because I was so consistent. Very little high-calorie sauces or sugar in my diet. And physical activity. I played classical piano from the time I was 5 years old. Most people don't think about that, but it is a physical activity. When I started working, I had to be conscious of the fact that when I shook hands, because my hands were so strong from all that exercise and doing scales and playing Liszt, that I was crushing people's hands, and I had to remember to back off, just as an aside. But when I could afford it, I played tennis regularly, and I'm a downhill skier, which I talked about earlier. I was always working on a Mission Impossible gardening project. I would drive my neighbors crazy by I built drywalls and had stone walls without cement. And I'd have these posts so that eventually the pieces would come together. And one of my neighbors said, well, this is never going to work. It's going to be a mess. But every morning when I worked locally to my house, I would be out in the yard at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would work on building the drywall. I didn't have to worry about the cement drying out. And so for an hour between 6 and 7, I made progress. And it was physical activity, which again works on secreting that dopamine so that I could handle the stress that occurred during the day. But I also needed to show progress. So if I spent an hour, I'd get maybe a foot and a half of the wall done. And I had accomplishment checked off on my list and in my brain, regardless of the chaos that occurred when I showed up at the office. And now I'm a golfer, and I play 18 holes of golf twice a week, and I walk. And it goes on my calendar. It is not if I can fit it in. It is planned. It is scheduled like any business meeting because it's important to me. I enjoy it. I enjoy the competition. I haven't lost that segment from my corporate life, and I very aggressively keep track of my score, my putts, the number of times I'm in the sand, and the whole 9 yards. In doing the research for my book, I also stumbled upon some information that I personally haven't experienced, and that is treatment in the medical profession and administration of medications. Doctors are reluctant to give adults medication for ADD. The first issue is most doctors only get between 6 and 8 hours of training about ADD and ADHD, and most of it is directed toward pediatric patients. So they are totally unaware of adults and their challenges. And because doctors tend to have big egos, when they're not aware of something, they deny it. So when you show up in a doctor's office, even if you've self-diagnosed and have a whole list of suggested procedures, they don't want to hear it, and they can't fit it into a 10-minute office visit, which is what the medical procedures are now here in the US. So you go undiagnosed. The statistics are it takes 2.3 doctors to even get anybody to listen to you, and I don't know what a third of, 0.3 of a doctor is, but those are the averages. The other issue that is faced is as you age, apparently there is some negative interaction between ADD and ADHD medication and heart medication. So the doctors are not prepared to take the liability risk of potentially aggravating a heart condition. So they basically say, and one woman was quoted as, I was treated by a doctor for 30 years. It allowed me to help my husband with the administrative side of his business. My doctor retired, and my new doctor will not prescribe medication for me. His comment was, at your age, why does it matter? Which is horrifying to someone like me. I mean, I have enough gray hair to indicate that I've been around the block a couple times, but how dare a doctor say, it doesn't matter whether you have 9 years, 90 days, or 9 minutes left in your life. None of us we don't have an expiration date. We don't know when it will end, but we are all entitled to live the most productive, effective, joyous life that we can. And if medication is the way that you choose to deal with it, you are entitled to that. And from what I understand, that is a real battle for you. I am going to be doing additional programs, and at this same time slot, I will be talking to you about Mission Impossible, or is it? Uncover your gifts, talents, or magic that you and you alone possess to change the world. I thank you, and I hope you've enjoyed this Brand Builders TV episode.
I hope that you've enjoyed the show today as much as we've enjoyed making it for you. If you've got anything out of this episode, please do tell someone else how they can subscribe to the Brand Builders TV channel at youtube.com/brandbuilderstv. Why not join us at our next Brand Builders Thinkubator, a global mastermind that we run every week to take away the loneliness of being in business on your own. For more information and to book your place, visit light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. That's light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. Until next time, be the ripple that you wish to see in the world, and we'll see you soon.